The Belfast.
Hi guys, my name is Joe, and today we're here with a good friend of mine who's going to ask me some questions, and we're going to be sharing it online.
So, I I know you've been like discovering life for a while now, and if there's one thing, just one thing, that's the biggest thing that you've learned along this way that you would like to share with somebody else, what would it be?
It's funny because something immediately comes to mind, and that is when to be quiet, to be silent, and just listen. I think that one especially is very personal because and it might be different for different people. Maybe some people need to learn in life to speak up, but I think for me was to be quiet because in my entire life I was trying to convey people of my viewpoint of life, you know? And I think there are many people in that position, but you kind of lose the beauty of life if you want everybody to sit in your shoes, to think what you're thinking, to agree with what your opinions are. So for me to truly learn and develop, I had to learn to be quiet, observe, don't judge, and just listen. What are people saying to each other? What are people saying to me? What are they saying about themselves? Even how the wind is blowing, what is it saying about the weather? Just listen. Yeah.
That's a good one. And okay, so but that doesn't count for everyone.
No.
So, what would the thing be if you could just give one general idea for everyone? What you think is most important that everybody should like integrate in their life, in their daily life?
Oosh. I think two things actually. I think one is embrace your triggers. And the reason I'm saying that is because we have a tendency to want to fix something very quickly. And what I've found in my life is that when you get to sit down and watch how maybe a situation or a person or, a reoccurring thought or emotion is triggering you in some way, that it's actually a very beautiful process because if you can sit down with that and just feel it, so we're coming back to that being quiet part and not judging, and you can do that, then funny enough, you discover something about yourself that in fact you did not know before. So we have this tendency to look outside to find growth. So we want, we want to do workshops and courses and listen to lectures and podcasts and listen to books. But the mirror is actually always speaking, and everything around you is a mirror. Every person is a mirror, and we get triggered throughout the day multiple times by a comment online and this friend that said something and my colleague that did this and my mother was tripping. So, the mirror is constantly showing us where we can improve. So I would say my number one advice for people, very practical throughout the day, is just be mindful of what are my triggers and don't push them away.
So what do you do instead?
Okay, so what do most people do? I think most people, when they have the trigger, the first instinct they have is, I don't want to feel this way. Which obviously is understandable because you want to be in a state of peace. But the problem with that is when you say, I don't want to, you're pushing it away. And a trigger never goes away that way. It just becomes bigger, causing you when it happens again, you just flip. So, and this is the hard part. You have to kind of flip that script and be like, I want to see where I'm fucked up, why I'm fucked up with this thing right here, why it fucks me up so much. There has to come like a certain curiosity in you to want to see your shadow. So that's the first part, that piece of embracing. So throughout the day, you have to have a certain awareness and watch your thoughts. And it doesn't have to be, all crazy, like you're sneaking up on your own brain. No. But we all have those moments where a certain thought pops up and we're like, why am I thinking that? Or I don't want to think that. And then we have a tendency to trying to move past it and go back to our peace again. But what in reality needs to happen is either one of two things. One, you take the time right now to sit down and be like, okay, why was I thinking that? And then try to close your eyes, go inside, and really reflect on why was I thinking that? Why did that thought come up? And if you don't have the time, write it down. Otherwise you'll forget. Write it down, and when you have the time later that day or tomorrow, take the moment to come sit down and watch it, and really reflect on that. And like I said, triggers, they happen on the inside, but they can be caused by mirrors that reflect things to us from outside as well. So it can be in a moment as well where maybe you're having, I don't know, coffee with a good friend. The friend says something to you and you immediately notice they're like, the hairs on your back are going, I don't like what this person said to me. But we're friends, so I'm not gonna jump in the conversation. We all experience this moment in our life, right? Or maybe it's a family member that we love a lot, but then the person says something just in such a way that we're like, did you have to say it that way to me? So those moments are important to really tell yourself, like, okay, I did not like that. I'm gonna come back to this moment and reflect on it. And the funny thing is when you communicate with yourself that way, it's almost like your brain listens and goes like, okay, if you promise to do that, I'll shut up about it right now and I'll come back to it later. Which is fascinating.
True.
Because the more you say to your brain, shut up, I don't want to talk, it's just gonna keep. But when you really tell it like, okay, you've got my attention, we're gonna work on this point together, let's do it later, it kind of subsides, and then you have to keep the promise and come back to it later. So that trigger reflection.
Okay. And still on trigger reflection, we'll move on to the second thing you said, because you said there were two things.
Mm-hmm.
But then, why do you think that it's hard for people? Because most of the times when we move through something like this, we'll recognize it, do something with it, and then maybe do it for 2 days, maybe 3, and then it kind of disappears into the nothingness, and then after a week or after 2 weeks, it comes up again. How can you maintain such work?
Good question. I think with most individuals, it has to do with accountability. So being in a position where you never want to blame an outside person or situation for something that's happened in your life. And I think most people get there because they've been through fucked up shit. If I look at the history of my mom, for example, heavily abused as a child and went through so many traumatic things. She had to come to a point where she had to say like, okay, it doesn't matter what happened in my life, I am responsible. Otherwise she was never able to really look at it without judging another person for her pain, which obviously kills your ability to heal. Because the first step in healing is saying, I played my part in this no matter how dark. I attracted this into my life no matter how nasty. If everything in life is a mirror that we attract, I was standing in front of the mirror. Why? So usually those type of life-changing events cause a person to really become consistent and checking themselves throughout the day, because they have that background and they want to grow from away from that background as much as possible. I think that's one thing. And let's say you didn't have those experiences, then there has to be discipline. So it's actually a very simple answer. You have to really prioritize it. So as an example, my mom, she would always let us do exercises in the morning when we were little as a child, where when we woke up we had to scan our body and scan our energy and then scan the energy of the room before standing up. So you wake up, you keep your eyes closed, you scan your body. How am I feeling? Is my body feeling healthy? Is it feeling tired? Is it feeling energized? So you just gather internal information. Then you go to your energy field. How does my energy feel? Is it grounded? Does it feel chaotic? Does it feel restless? Does it have focus? So you just make a basic assessment for the day. And then you go to the room around you, the space, to see how much of the space is influencing you and how much of you is influencing the space. And based on that awareness, you start your day. So that kind of automatically, you're in a state of observing yourself, because it's the first thing you start your day with. But when I started to go live on my own, you would go to college, you get wrong friends, you go to parties, you start living life differently. Everything my mom told me not to do, I started doing. So that whole way of waking up, I threw it out of the window. And usually what happens before it really becomes a consistent pattern is you learn the benefits because there was a time that you did it consistently, and you learn the cons of not doing it. Because immediately I stepped into, waking up and then doing things unconsciously. I just stood up, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, and I realized when I was brushing my teeth, what was I thinking? What was I doing? I don't know. I was just in a, automatic pilot. But that translates into like deeper parts of your life as well. That maybe when you have serious conversations or emotional conversations with yourself or other people, that you're regurgitating or saying things that afterwards you don't even know exactly what you said again. And then you realize I'm slacking. I'm not aware of what's going on in me internally enough. And those are lessons. That's life telling you, hey, wake up, pick it up. You can do better. So sometimes it has to be very easy, that you just make it very strict for yourself. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I'm going to do is blah, blah, blah. It can be different for each person. But if it's, for example, watching your triggers, then a great one would be, maybe not in the morning because you're going to wake up a little bit, cranky maybe, if you view all your triggers in the morning right immediately. Maybe before you go to sleep. Just make it a rule that when you go to sleep, you go throughout the day. That's an exercise I used to do for a few years as well. I had a teacher who made me do that. You view the day mentally, and you view all your actions. Okay, I stood up, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, went to eat this and this and this. The first problem here is that you notice, if you've never done this before, that you're gonna have a hard time recalling everything you did in your day. You realize like, oh my God, I was so unconscious. I was just like like a fart in the wind. But the more you do the exercise, you'll notice during the day when you're checking out. Hey, wait, I'm checking out. Okay, be present again. But during that night practice, as you go throughout the day, you keep in mind the same intention, the same question, which is, what were the things that triggered me? And then you write them down. And then when you're done viewing the day, you just review the triggers. Why did that trigger me? What part of me was hurt by that? And why did that hurt come up? And quickly you'll notice that it doesn't matter what emotion came up that day after that trigger, it always has to do with fear. Because fear is the root of all negative emotions. I wouldn't say even negative emotions, all teachers. Because when you're angry, usually it's the fear of somebody crossing your boundaries. And when somebody actually crossed your boundaries, you become angry because now your fear has been actualized. If it's sadness, usually it's the fear of losing something, the fear that you might lose something again, or the fear that something was lost, you will not get it back. If your family member dies and you get grief, you get the sadness, it's a fear of never receiving that love again, never seeing that person again. So the trigger brings you to the root of all your issues, which is, what am I afraid of as a human being?